Okay, so I'm going live. I think we should be live by now. Okay. Yeah, so yes, we are live. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. I hope I am audible to all of you. And so, I hope I'm audible. So today's topic of discussion is what skills and certifications should you have for a big data career? So all of you know that traditional data analysis techniques are falling short in this digital age where organizations have tons and tons of data to make sense of, and this is where big data basically steps in. But how do you really get into this career, especially when you're a fresher, when you're a beginner, and you don't know much about the profession? So to answer your questions and to help you out, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Stephen Deva Paul, who is our speaker for today. Stephen is currently the Associate Vice President and Head of Product at myPAT, and he has more than 8 years of industry experience as well as training experience. He has worked in the likes of companies like Flipkart and has also trained more than 5 lakh students till date, and was also recognized as India's youngest tech speaker by Google in 2019. So as you all know, we'll be taking up questions later about big data as a career. So don't forget to post in your questions in the live chat box that you see, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So without any further delay, Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Niharika. Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me here as a part of your series that you guys are doing up with as a part of your Naukri Learning. I'm so glad, I'm so excited to be part of this, and I'm also so equally happy enough to share the knowledge that I've acquired over the past 8-9 years in my career in terms of big data and analytics, right? So I'm so really, thank you for having me here. And we'll sort of see around, today, I want to keep it, the session very informative. And also, we want to keep it very short and crisp and precise. So we want to open up the floor as soon as possible. We want to hear from the people, right? So there might be a lot of things, a lot of questions running around and everything. So thank you, Niharika. Thanks for that warm welcome that you had. And also, hey, everyone. So thank you for joining us today on this live stream for the big data session that we're going to do up around, right? So, so fasten up. So for the next 30-40 minutes, I'm going to run you through so how big data would be helpful, right? So we'll sort of take you a little short glimpse about the big data, and also what are the sort of tools and the certifications that would help you out, right? So on how we're going to make big data as a career, right? So a lot of things why big data is so fascinating enough, right? So the multiple things that I'm going to run you through for the next 35-40 minutes, and then I hope at the end of the session, right? So we'll sort of have very open up the floor for the questionnaire. Cool. Before, this is one of my favorite quotes that we all see that, what big data is all about, right? So, by Mr. Pat, the CEO of the VMware, right? So he says the data is a new science and big data holds all the answers for that, right? So that's really that, everything, a lot of solutions are being derived, a lot of problems are being solved, right? So a lot of things, are, making the systems or the businesses potential to the next level, right? So big data is helping us to take care. So to that level, wherever we are running around, wherever we are seeing around, right? So we see the kind of way and, the way how big data is impacting in a lot of other terms. And so what we see majorly, there are a lot of things, right? So since big data is the buzzword in the market right now, big data is the thing where a lot of people would think, okay, what am I doing? And is big data, should I make career in big data? Should I think about how big data can change my prospectors in professional way, right? So the moment we start to think about it and, someone is pretty relevantly, it's a very new technology, it's been prevailing less than 10 years in the market and in the industry. And a lot of people think, what is it the way that I would want to see? Like, what is it the way that how I would want to shape and take through how big data happens, right? So we majorly see across a lot of things, and we also majorly see like how things would sort of evolve for the people, and we also see that how big data is growing, right? So it is from a small fish to be a big shark, right? So maybe the big whale, wherein it is growing huge and enormous day by day as we speak as well, right? So, but when we are making a career, right? So we don't naturally come from a big data background or maybe from the data background. We all come from different various skill sets that we have acquired over the point of time during our engineering days, during our education, during engineering and everything. But there's one thing which always gets one thing, right? So we always want to keep up with the trend. We always want to see that, how we are able to match up to what the market is all about. Right. So the first thing we'd always say that, you want to get into big data, you want to make big data as your career. The first and foremost question that always you get, can I get a job on big data? That's the first thing that always hits up everybody's mind. Now that coming up to that level, right? So now once okay, now let's say if I have to get a job, what should I do about it? Where should I learn about it? Right. So now even if I acquire a certain level of skill set, right, without any practical knowledge, without any practicalities, will companies going to hire me even if I have it? To what extent they're going to hire me? Right. So on end of the day, we all work for the bread and butter, which is money. And next thing is, we look at the monetary benefits, we look at the income source, how much of amount or the money that I'm going to earn about it. Right. So this is one set of things that you see. And also to start off with, right? So the other questions that keeps boggling up your mind is that, what sort of skills do I need? And what are the career opportunities that are sort of available for me to take care of? And do I need certification, or should I just learn from the freeway course that is there without any certification around? All right. So what if I want to choose, if not this, some other technology? The multiple questions, I might have covered few of them, and maybe you guys, as you guys are listening around, right? So maybe you can post those questions on the live chat box so that I'll be happy to answer at the end of the session. And we can see around, right? So how this big data, where you can make a kickstart or maybe a jump start in your career, wherein, it can lead you up to the what it is in the industry on the top place right now. All right. So there are a lot of things that we're going to learn around. All right. So see how things are going to do it around. And then, we can see through what really makes a big data as a career and a very prospectful career in your life. The first and foremost thing, right? So we all want to know what is big data, right? So, a lot of times, when I interact with people, when I interact with students in colleges and everything, right? So or maybe professionals, employees, in the IT, from the IT background, the first and foremost thing that I always ask them, what is big data? Everybody has their own set of answers. People say it's a data of data, it's a godfather or godmother of data. There are multiple things that comes in data. A lot of people say, these are the things that comes in. But for me, I would say that, big data is still a data, but bigger in size. Nothing has changed, right? A data which started way back in the bits and the bytes and the kilobytes and the metabytes and everything in the megas and the gigas have come, the teras have come, the zetas have come, the petas have come, everything had come. The information remained the same, right? So we talk about big data. The name itself suggests, the nomenclature itself suggests that big data is nothing but a data which is huge in size, right? Because we live in a world of where internet has become a part of our life. Maybe I can say that it's an extended version of my body, right? So without internet, it's very hard to imagine how can we even survive, how can we get the job done, how could we do this, and also the smart devices which are empowering it. So what is really required around? If you could see the kind of tremendous data that is being generated by us. Now let's say when I talk about data, right? So as we speak right now, as you're watching me on YouTube is generating a huge, tremendous amount of data around this live stream. And this is not just the stream. There are a lot of other live streams which are happening on YouTube. And also at the same point of time, you would see that, the whole of the YouTube videos are getting uploaded, right? You talk about social media, on Facebook, a lot of posts are being shared. Even live streams are happening on Facebook, right? Twitter, the medias are being shared on Twitter, the tweets are being shared, right? So, and even on Instagram, there are a lot of things. Even as we do on a Zoom Connect right now, even Zoom, we are generating a lot of data. All I would say is that, we are the data sources, we are the data creators, right? So you just log into a system, you're creating a data point. You just log out of the system, you're creating a data point. The multiple ways that you always see that, what are those data sets? Now you have a lot of data points, a collection of all those data points get you the data sets, and those data sets all together will give you a huge bunch of data, which is together enormously called as the big data. Now we always talk about, data being databases. We talk about a lot of other things. It's exactly the same, right? So the base still remains the same, but the way how you handle a larger chunk or size of the data in a very effective manner, how do you crunch it to get a better insights out of it, is is all about big data. How do you engineer that whole data, right? So because like I said, we live in a 21st century. We have a lot of devices around. There are a lot of devices. Even if I could count myself, right? I have like 3 to 4 laptops around me. I have a lot of, I have a tablet, I have mobile phones, I have a smartwatches. Everything is generating data within me, right? So now if I see that, billions of users over this globe in the planet, there are a lot of data points that are coming around. And to crunch and to see that the data, this is becoming the source. Now, this is where businesses have to grow when they're offering services. They look at user insights. They have to see what user wants. Only then they would know that, how this whole data can be utilized to help them improve the user experience, which would help them to also increase the business as well. Right. So when we see this, the how whole big data is all about, we always see that, how data has to be crunched and clustered, and the way how we see it around, the better insights and the better outputs gives you the better data. So to just give you a small just around, right? So what are these characteristics, right? So basically there are 3 pillars, I would call it as, rather than usually they call it the 3 V's or the V3s of big data. What I majorly see around with the big data, there are 3 things. They're the major pillars, right? So the volume, velocity, and the variety, right? So you talk about a huge volume of data is one, and you also see about, the kind of velocity that data comes in, and also the kind of variety of data. Now I talk about the volume of thing. Now let's say, as we talk, all right, so this whole live stream session, it's generating, gigabytes of data around, right? So there are a lot of data that is coming, and the size is really huge. And also at what speed, at what rate this is coming, it's happening at a very rapid speed and a rapid place, right? And also that you also see around, right? So what are the data types? Now I'm talking about, now let's say social media as a platform. Let's talk about Facebook, right? So now Facebook has multiple features, multiple modules where you can share the post, which is a text data, or you can also add a photo, which is an imaginary data. You also add a video, which is a video data, right? So you also add an audio clip, that's an audio clip data. There are multiple varieties of data. So now you have a huge volume of data coming at a faster speed with the varieties of it. How would your database be able to? Traditional databases will not be able to handle such huge amounts of data, right? So because it is coming in a huge number, because it is always limited or constrained by it. And then you also see the kind of velocity that is coming in. It's coming at a very rapid pace in a split second. And then also the type of variety of data types that are coming in, right? So you all see this together, right? There's only one answer to all of this, to weigh how you can handle this, how you can process this, how you can use it for better way. That is only through big data engineering. Excuse me. Okay, so if you could see this, how big data is being generated, right? It's a very small gist. If you could see around Walmart, one of the largest retail stores they have got all across the globe, they handle around 1 million customer transactions in every single hour, right? So that's like really huge. I mean, like you talk about a lot of transactional data, the payment details, the customer details, the items that has been this 1 million transactions, right? Or 1 million customer transactions are being recorded in every hour. And eBay has 6.5 petabytes of user data, which is like almost and plus 50 terabytes of data per day. And Facebook also generates a huge amount of data. Also, in a day, Facebook would handle around 40 billion photos. I'm not talking about 1 or 2, right? So 40 billion photos, the images that we share on Facebook, right? So it generates a huge amount of data. And also the very famous Google that we have, right? So even a search query that we type on Google, that's also generating of a data point, right? That also processes around 20 petabytes of data, which is really, really huge, that is getting generated. Now you can imagine the tremendous amount of data that is being generated every day. Now, as you see, the multiple tools which can be used, the way how big data is being generated, and how it has to be hosted, and how it has to be stored, and how it has to be processed, right? So the multiple things. Now, what we also see that, majorly on a scale, see, big data at the end of the day, it's a technology, all right? So now we talk about a technology, everything has to be hosted somewhere, everything has to be processed somewhere. You need certain tools, you need certain things wherein, people can come in and see where this whole process of things happens around. The first thing that always happens on the hosting is that, like we live in an era of cloud, right? So back those years, we always had, the servers which had a limited space around, right? So certain terabytes of data space or storage space, right? So now there is something that, your hosting can happen from anywhere online, right? So majorly, the best solutions are, I'm like, yeah, maybe you can contradict with me looking at the screen, right? So there are a lot of other things which could be used. I've picked the best, the optimal data setup for the infrastructure setup for a big data solutioning. So the hosting can happen on your distributed servers, majorly your cloud, especially on, if you look at the AWS level, it's on Amazon EC2, and the storage can happen on Amazon S3, and your programming model happens on a MapReduce. So distributed processing. Now, what is this MapReduce? To give a small idea about what exactly a MapReduce is, basically you have a large chunk of data breaking down into pieces and clustering them together is called a MapReduce. Right. So now to give a real example, now when you search something for on a Google, right? So now let's say I search for Naukri. Now what I get, there is a lot of results which would come down. Right. So now you look at those tabs, you have all, you have image web, you have images, you have news, you have videos, you have shopping, you have ebooks, you have everything. Right. So now these query, whatever the Naukri query, has fetched out a lot of things, wherein it has been broken down into pieces, and based on the type they've been clustered together, which you give a result of images altogether, gives you links of all the web pages, also gives you videos of all the video links, right? So that's how that's a map reduce which is happening there, right? So we have already known there's a live application which is happening, just that we don't know what is the technology running behind it. So it's actually the map reduce algorithms which runs around and they do this around. And then how do you do the storage and indexing? So most probably you would have heard about SQL is the thing, right? So in a lot of traditional databases or the relational databases, what you see is that you have the whole database systems built, and you have a traditional SQL query language, right? Sequence query language. Now there is something which has been developed because something called NoSQL. Now NoSQL is something, there's no structured query language, right? So there is no structured query language. The only reason why, because the data which is present in big data, there are multiple sets of data. Like I said already in the 3 V's, the variety, the multiple varieties of it, right? Your structured query language can handle only certain data types, not every data type. But here you have multiple varieties of data types. You would really require what sort of data types that you see in. And that is when you see that you require no structure, pull in the data from wherever you want, however you want, like you bring those things together. And that's when you have a no structured query language, wherein most probably MongoDB is the thing which goes around, even Postgres, right? So these two are one of those efficient databases wherein it can be used for storage and your indexing as well. And for your processing, right? So we have analytics models and semantic model. Analytic model is something that I've given X input and what is the Y output. And semantic is something that I give an X and my output will be X1, X2, and X3, right? So there are multiple different levels of processing that happens around, wherein you can get the varieties of outputs around the same structure that we built. And now we see, this is the most important thing, right? So we need to know why we have to learn the big data. The reason being because, first and foremost thing, it's one of the highest paying jobs on the globe. Trust me, not just in India. Yeah, to that matters, India is also one of the highest paying nations in the big data. US, UK, and the whole of the Europe, right? So the lot of nations, the IT industry pays big data engineers a lot. When I say a lot, that's actually mean they pay a lot. And also, second thing is that big data is now being used in every industry. We talk about telecom. We talk about let me segregate in this way. I talk about the online industry. I'll talk about the offline industry, right? So now the online industry is something that you have the e-commerce, you have the social media platforms, you have a lot of things. Now there's a huge amounts of data that is being generated. And also when you look at around this, the offline industry. Now let me talk about the telecom industry. Let me talk about the weather forecasting industry, the stock markets. Right now I talk about the offline retail stores. Everywhere the whole data is getting digitized. Though the transactions might happen offline, maybe the transactions might happen without the use of internet, maybe through cash or something, but that is getting recorded somewhere. The whole transaction is getting recorded somewhere. Right now you talk about stocks, the whole stock market system. Let's talk about NSE or the BSE, the NASDAQ, NSVI. There are a lot of other stock markets around, right? So there's a lot of data that is coming in. So you could see the importance of big data that is being used, wherein you can predict something, you can analyze the data, use for prediction, improve your business, scale it up. You can use it in multiple forms, right? So that you see that the way how we can do it. Also, the other way, why to learn, like I told you, right? So big data is a buzzword. Big data is the thing which is happening right now. It can be used for the skill enhancement, right? So the way how you enhance your skills, the way how you look at the way you see, because I'm a software guy, I'm an engineer. I always believe in an update and upgrade, right? So we have to update ourselves every day, right? So I have to enhance my skills. Maybe I might do something good today, it gets outdated tomorrow, right? So maybe a new version would be coming in around. A lot of things that happens, right? So skill enhancement is another area that we see around. And other thing, it also gives you a competitive advantage, right? So like I said, this is something, a new industry which is coming in the picture right now, and you also see the kind of advantage that you get around, right? So when you talk about the whole journey of being an engineer, being an IT guy, being a techie, right? So it gives an extra advantage from other people, gives you that X factor, gives you that thing, wherein you could use this whole skill set. You can use this whole thing, wherein it can make your career move forward. It can help you progress in your career. And like I said, there's a better opportunity everywhere. This is it's not so new, it's not so old as well. It's actually in the very growing phase right now, even in the Indian market. You look for a better career opportunities. You just go on Naukri and look for the careers in big data, right? So big data engineer, or maybe look for data analyst, a lot of things. You see a lot of things will come into picture, because a lot of job postings you would find very new to help you progress forward. And also, I'll tell you the market of size of this. So right now it's 2 billion US dollars, right? So which is current thing. In a span of next 3 years, this whole market is going to be a $16 billion industry. I'm just talking about India. I'm not talking across the globe. I'm not talking about any other country. I'm just talking about India, which is currently a $2 billion market. It will definitely go around that, wherein you would go to $16 billion industry, which is like really tremendous, huge. And now we see what are the skill sets that are really required. Right? So there are a lot of skills, that comes in. But I would personally prefer these are the major skill sets that you want to learn to become the master in the big data. The first one is your Hadoop. Second thing is the Spark, wherein Hadoop is your whole file system of your DB database and everything, right? So where you query a lot of things, where you bring around, right? So and then you have Spark and have as your query languages, and then you convert this into machine learning, right? So then you also have to have a skill of data mining. Along with this, data visualization. It's not about bringing the data out. How do you represent it to the end user, right? So this is something that you also need to be aware of, right? So how a data visualization happens. And also you need to know, just because I told you SQL has got replaced by NoSQL, but the problem here is that, SQL is still the base, right? So you have to have a fair enough of idea about SQL, and then, you need to sort of enhance yourself, or maybe, upgrade yourself on a NoSQL level, right? So, and also apart from all this, let's say you want to be a big data engineer, especially data structures and algorithms, because see, at the end of the day, how we write those algos which will create those data points, and how your system would understand what data sources are being generated from what data points, right? So you really require the algorithm structure, and also you need to have the data structure, how the data is being flown, how it is being sorted and everything, right? So you need a typical data structure and algorithms also as a skill set. Now, what are the roles that you actually see, right? There are multiple major roles that you see across, but I have listed down for a beginner, right? So this would be three major roles that you see around. The first and foremost, if you want to kickstart your career in big data, that would be data analyst, right? So data analyst is a role where you can really kickstart off, and you can start as a beginner, wherein you can move towards and forward making a successful big data career. And once you're done with being a data analyst, data engineer is something that you need to focus upon. So what data analysts do, they're majorly problem solvers. They see the data, they get the data out. Right now, engineer is someone who devises solutions, or who code, who devises a solution, who creates, the data points for everyone. And then, they would see that, these are the things that can be engineered. Now, what happens with the data scientist? Now, data scientist comes up with a certain level of algorithms, whatever the data points, which has been nurtured or maybe engineered by the data engineer, he takes it up. He adapts those data points, which is called as a data modeling, into his algorithms. And then, the whole data scientists, they do this whole process of data science. Even your machine learning, artificial intelligence also would fall into this. And now, once you have all this, the ultimate step is about becoming a data architect, right? So now, there used to be a trend, DB architects, database architects, where, they would structure the way how data has to be stored, the data, how data has to be retrieved, where to store, how to store, when to store, right? So the same similar way, data architects are the ultimate points wherein, you would know what sort of data is being structured and how it has to be taken out, Now it has to be consumed and utilized, right? So the multiple ways that you see, the data sets around how, these are the growth stages. Starting with the data analyst, how you fetch the data, take the data, crunch it, and see the how you engineer this, make it, beautify it, and then give it to the data science where they would adapt by building a solution around it, and see how data architect would maintain the whole data around, right? So this is a growth phase of whole of the big data career job roles. A lot of analytics, right? So now there are two kinds of analytics that we always see. Now, one is on a predictive analytics, and the second one is a non-predictive analytics. Now, non-predictive is something your real-time analytics, right? So now, predictive analytics, I look at the historical data, and we see, okay, looking at my historical data, looking at this data, I can predict my future of the business, or maybe I can predict the future of the customer behavior, right? So the multiple way that we see how this could be done. Now, that's one sort of an analytics that happens. And also the way when we crunch down to other the real-time analytics, that gives you a real-time. Google Analytics is the best example. Now, let's say, for example, I have linked up Google Analytics to my website, right? My website would show what are the real-time traffic users, where is the drop-off rate, where is the bounce rate, where is my user spending a lot of time, on which page, where are they clicking a lot, right? So the multiple analytics can be derived, which is a real-time analytics. Now, this is the stored data which will be used for predicting it, right? So these are the two sorts of analytics that you always need to do around. And there are a lot of analytical tools that you can look around, right? So Google Fusion Tables, you can see Rapid Miner, OpenRefine, Wolfram Alpha, Solver, Dataiku, right? So the multiple things, even I've picked up the best. There have been hundreds of tools in the market, but I've picked up the best 10 tools which can sort of, help you out in becoming, in learning of this thing. Now, after all said, I've talking for the last 30 minutes, what is big data, why big data, what are the roles that it's in. Now, tell me something, let me tell you this. Why big data has to be a choice for your career, right? So one thing, you see the kind of rise that is happening up right now, right? So there's a great demand that you see around, right? So if you could see that, the way how big data is being used, if you could see the way how this basically, this is a growing industry. This is the market right now, which is growing, and I don't think it's going to die anytime soon. Maybe in the next 15, 20 years, big data will still prevail the way how it is exponentially blowing up. And the second thing is also, there's a huge skill gap. The reason because, right now you see people, there are only a limited set of engineers or maybe a limited set of big data specialists in the market, wherein, they hardly possess any skills, but a lot of companies require a lot of people around. Right, so that is something that you also want to see. You acquire those skills, it will definitely be an add-on to your career, and then you can use this up and becoming a better big data guy. And also, we talk about unstructured data analytics because there's a lot of problem solving. Not just solving the problem, you're going to solve complex problems, right? So the more the complex problem solves, the better you become at problem solving, right? So if you see the whole structure, how it has been happening and everything, right? So this is the way how the same data sets are built across, and then we see it around. But also, if you see the kind of job profiles that are coming, fancy pay jobs, trust me, in India, an average big data engineer package would come around 18 to 20 lakhs. It's for a starter. For a starter, 18 to 20 lakhs per annum is a package that comes around, right? So you see, there have been a very lucrative job profiles around this, and this is where your career is going to go forward. And majorly, you see, big data, data science, you hear a lot of things. People think these both are the same, which is not, right? So there are a lot of things. Now, let's say you talk about the concept responsibility industry and the kind of tools that you see around. Looking at this, like I said, big data is how do you handle that data which is coming into your system. Now, data science is something, how do you take that data which is stored, that big data which is stored in your system, how do you take it, analyze it, and make it better for the betterment of your business or betterment of the customer life cycle and anything of the product, improvising the product. And second thing is also, the kind of what does a big data measure, like I said, generates the insights of the huge volumes. It's just going to generate and show that, this way. But the decision making, the kind of patterns, how the data has to be there, the behavioral analytics comes into picture. That all stuff happens at a data science level, right? And also the major industry, like I said, e-commerce is one, security services, telecommunication, right? So stock marketing, there are a lot of industries, weather reporting. There are a lot of industries which generates a huge amount of data that majorly requires a big data. And then, data science is something, let's say, I talk about ads, digital marketing, right? So now, for example, you're watching a video on YouTube, right? So you get those ads. Now, those ads are two kinds of things. One thing, the kind of channels that you have subscribed for, So each channel has a kind of a journal, let's say a tech channel, facts channel, right? So based on that, they would know this is the kind of ad that I want to show to the customer, to the user, which is you and me. And second thing is that, apart from this, what are the other kind of ads that comes into based on a browsing history, or maybe the data which is collected by the Google, right? So maybe you would have searched something on Google, or maybe you would have gone through certain ads, while you were browsing on Gmail, or maybe you would have clicked certain promotional mailers, right? So those kind of things, your data science would analyze it. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to show because the user is really interested in such kind of journals, right? So this is a reason wherein they would use data science in that way. And like I said, tools you have Hadoop, Spark, Flink, those big query tools wherein you would help them to crunch out, fetching those data. And then you have the SAS, R, Python, wherein you use it. How do you beautify the whole data, right? So that those sort of things that you use it in the data science. So what are the certifications and courses that you have? Today, you go to internet, you go to Google and search for big data certification courses. You get a lot of things, right? So, but I would personally suggest, these are the top 5-6 courses that you have to figure out wherein to kickstart your career. First and foremost, certified analytics professional. Now, when I say certified analytics professional, any courses which are around data analyst or data analysis, you can jumpstart into this. You can kickstart into this, rather, I would say. Right? This is one area that you can see around. You can see how that is being used, and also the kind of next is the SAS data science certificate, which is for the initial primary beginners. Also, all the courses that I mentioned here, what you're looking at the screen right now, they're all for the beginners, right? To start off with. Right, so maybe you find multiple things on the internet, but for someone who's on a beginner nascent state, these are the top 5-6 courses wherein that would be required. And Cloudera is something that you need to have Cloudera certified associate or professional, right? So now when you say Cloudera is also one of the major vendors for big data, right? So the way how they handle process, they build tools for big data analysis, right? So you need to see around work for Cloudera that we come up, and then you also have someone wants to make this is the thing. A lot of companies use AWS as their primary cloud servers, right? So you have Amazon AWS Big Data certification. Not many knew about this, right? So in the recent times, over the past 1.5-2 years, Amazon has started this. So you can get a certification for AWS Big Data. You can actually get this course free on AWS website, which is available for free. You can get the course material on their blogs and everything, right? So which is really interesting, and it also helps you out, powering the power of cloud, what AWS offers. And also, you get the big data. So now there's a new concept which is getting evolved in the recent times, something called as big cloud, right? So power of big data happening on a cloud level, right? So Amazon AWS is giving that. So I think this will be one of the best courses I can suggest out of all this, right? So Amazon AWS Big Data certification. And then you have Oracle's Certified Business Intelligence. The last 5 courses that you see around, the first course has to be Certified Analytics Professional. Once you know what you need for as a data analyst, then you can see as an upgrade for all these courses, right? So I want you to start off with data analyst, and then everything you have to follow it. Now you try to see that jump around directly to being a data science and data things. Trust me, it's not going to be so easy because you would miss out a lot of learnings behind, right? So I think this is where majorly you need to see around how you can sort of build this whole data thing, right? So start off with a data analysis, and then you can see step by step how we can move forward in career. Yeah, any other questions? I hope I was able to put some thought around, right? So any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure, there are people who are watching, but we have one question as of now, which is actually quite interesting. Siddharth asks that if you can give some project examples to showcase big data skills.
Okay, some project examples to show. Oh, awesome. Okay, hey Siddharth, thank you for joining us today. Siddharth, if you can punch that in, meanwhile, I'll keep answering your question. So meanwhile, if you can punch in, what sort of project skills that you're looking at, on a nascent level or as a beginner level or an expert level, right? So if you can punch that down in the comment box, I can help you to answer. But meanwhile, I'll just let you know what sort of project skills, you can acquire around. Maybe, one certain thing, maybe if you're looking for a project example, I believe that this would be on a beginner level. First and foremost thing, you need to see around what sort of exact data. See, like I said, MapReduce is somewhere. If I go back to my talk, which I initially told you, the processing happens on a MapReduce level, right? So MapReduce is something that we do it. Now, let's say we talk about Facebook, right? So maybe you talk about Twitter, any of the social media, or Instagram, and anything. You have a large variety of data that is coming in, or maybe let me not talk about it. Let's talk about e-commerce, all right? Let's talk about Flipkart. There's someone with 2 years with Spark and Kafka. Okay, Siddharth, I'll answer that. All right, so awesome, yeah. Right, so now for the beginners, right? So we're watching is for the beginners as well. I'll cover this part as well. Someone now let's say you have a huge, tremendous amounts of data, right? So now, maybe when I say tremendous amounts of data, it doesn't have to be in petabytes, right? So it doesn't has to be in zettabytes. Now let's say you're working out on a system, it has to be 2 TB or 3 TB or maybe 1 TB or 500 G. It doesn't matter. Now you have a varieties of data. The first three V's that I said, variety, velocity, and the volume, right? So you have to see how could you refine this data better. Now, for example, you can start off with, the Google Analytics is the best tool. You have a lot of data sets which are readily available. You can just Google them and you can get it. Make sure that you embed that template on your Google Analytics and you can see how we can crunch the data around. Now, let's say, for an e-commerce level, right? So now let me talk about Flipkart. Now, as a user, there are two types of users who is always there on Flipkart: a logged-in user and a non-logged-in user, right? So someone who's as a customer, right? I have a Flipkart account who doesn't have a Flipkart account. My journey as a logged-in user, as a Flipkart account user, would be different, and my journey without being a Flipkart account would be completely different. The reason why, because now there are certain specified offers which are being shown to you only if you're a logged-in user, right? Based on your demographical location, based on your buying history, based on what the recommendation that comes in, based on your your browsing history and everything, right? So now you see this is something that how does the recommendation happening here? You have a certain data points which are generated. The way how big data, I'm just talking about one customer, that millions of customers are, right? So now there's a collection of, let's say Redmi Note 11, right, which is going to release very soon. That might be in the trending, right? So you see the trending on Twitter, it exactly happens in the same way, though we might not show a trending hashtag, right? So on the e-commerce websites, but this is something that we play around with the same technology. Now let's say even on e-commerce, I think Amazon does this. They have a small tag which shows this is a trending product right now, which is when I say trending, is most viewed, most bought product. A lot of people are placing orders around it, right? So this is how you have a certain level data sets, and you can start with any of the e-commerce website, any of the e-commerce social media for a beginner. And now coming to you, Siddharth, someone with 2 years with Spark and Kafka, what I would suggest you is, now you can go to Apache Foundation, right? You can Google that, and which is open source. You have a lot of data sets which are available there. So what you can do is, to kickstart, since you already have, I believe it's your question is for you, for yourself. You already have a 2 years of experience, in Spark and Kafka. What you can do is, there's a large, tremendous amounts of data sets which are already available. Take them and design your own data models around it, right? So now, let's say you have a customer buying data. Now, what you can do about this customer buying data? Now, do you see that is customer returning the product? Is he still placing the same product again? Or is he looking at the product, he's not buying the product? Right? So you can create certain level of data points. And what you can do is you can create your own history of things. Right? Now, this is on a e-commerce or maybe a shopping behavior level, or maybe you can do this for a retail store data, or you can just do this for a regular data as well. Now, let's say, for a manufacturing unit, right? So let's say it's a car manufacturing unit. Now, it's amount of cars are being manufactured. You also find, I'm just saying these are the examples which are already there in Apache, right? So on the foundation, go to their blog, the resources, you will find a lot of data sets, right? And that way, if you can see around, crunching up those numbers and everything, create your own data points, create your own data sets and data models since you're experienced, right? That itself can become a thing. But ultimately, you need a data visualization as well, right? So now how do you put those blocks together, making those data visualization? And then, you can see what best makes you out, that whole sum becomes one single project. Now, it's not just about looking at the whole data and what are you deriving out of it ultimately, right? Are you proposing a new solution? Have you identified or figured out a problem there, or a loophole there, or maybe something, a bridge that can be connected, right? So that is most really important, right? So we use big data not to just analyze, to find a betterment of solutions, right? To make it even more better for the users and businesses, right? So ultimately, I think, you can sort of work around these kind of projects, and that would really help you out.
Right.
I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah. I think that was quite, I mean, detailed and well put. I hope we were able to answer Siddharth's question. So,
Mhm.
meanwhile, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to post. Meanwhile, I can take some of the questions that people posted in during the time of registration, because I'm sure that they would be able to answer the queries that people have on a wider scale. So, like for example, the common question that comes is, how can someone move into big data or data science from a data analyst role? So, someone who is in a data analyst role, if they want to switch into big data, what should they do?
Okay, data analyst was something which hasn't come into market with big data. It has been around for quite some time now, right? So I believe now, let's say if someone who has asked that question, right? So now let me answer both the sides of the coin. Side one would be that I believe that you don't come from a typical core big data background, and side two would be that you're already working on the big data as a data analyst, and you want to progress in it. You have to upgrade your career. Right. So now coming to the first thing, you don't come from this. Now let's say data analyst earlier. Maybe let me talk about 2014, 13, maybe in the early 2000s. Right. So we had this traditional databases around. Right. So we already had a similar set of data sets which were coming in, but not at that volume and not the kind of variety that we are looking. Now let's say if I'm a data analyst working for a traditional bank, right? So the largest public sector bank, let's say for SBI in India, right? So now SBI generates huge amounts of transactional data every day, right? So is it about transferring the money, depositing the money, mutual funds, SIPs? There are a lot of different portfolios, credit cards, right? Auto loans and different kinds of loans that you have around. There's a lot of transactional data, which is a structured data. You don't talk about images there. Yeah, maybe now these days for KYCs, we are doing a lot of technology in it. But back then it was just about, you have a checkbook, you have a demand draft, you have cash, which you take it from the counter. Every record is being updated on a computer, despite it used to be a very slow computers back then. But they used to do it at the end of the day. They used to store it digitally somewhere since the beginning of 2000s. Right? So now you have a lot of structured data out there, and you have a very traditional database with a structured query language. Now, these analysts, whoever these data analysts are, have to move towards this, right? So now if you could look at my previous slide, right? So you need to do a certification for certified analytics professional. Now, this is purely for someone who doesn't, I mean, like they are data analysts, but doesn't come from a big data background, right? Who comes with a traditional working with traditional databases, maybe for a year, for quite some time now. This is something that, they can start off the career with. That is one area. Now, second area for someone who's already a big data professional, right? So who's working on big data, let's say in any of the e-commerce organization in the country, or maybe let's say cab aggregators like Ola, Uber, or any other company, right? So you work for them, crunching the data every day. Now, how do you move forward? There are two ways. Now, either you're smart enough to straight away move ahead in your career, showing up your work, your skills that you acquire working with these big data engineers, right? It looks, you can see the kind of level that you will be able to grasp, and then you move forward. Second thing is, if you ask me the kind of certifications, I would suggest you to become a cloud certified professional, right? So you're already at an associate level right now. You become a professional, or maybe let's say Amazon AWS, which I was stressing a lot, right? So Amazon AWS big data would be sort of helpful to move across into a different scale. I think this will be the careers that will be helpful for you.
Okay, and apart from that, like what kind of frameworks and programming languages should one know? So we also had a question that, what is the kind of what is the role of programming languages really into big data, and what kind of languages they should know? So
Okay,
answers both the questions.
definitely the new generation languages on any day. I would say Python R, right? So this would be the major programming language that you need to see around. Yeah, some places they still use Java, even for big data, but it is not really reliable. Trust me, it's not. Right. So Python is something that you can bank upon, and R is something that also you can bank upon. And for also the kind of programming script, now let's say pig scripting is something that Hive scripting. Now you have the Hadoop, right? So now pig scripting is that you put up a structured thing where I can fetch the data in a very structured query language, right? Like I said, it's a NoSQL. I think these are the things which would be able to sort of get you around the way how it has to be there. So I would say for a beginner, you can start off with Python, not even with R. Python would be the best thing, and also with the pig scripting. And for an advancer, I would say R would be the best thing, and also you can go with the Hive. I think this four would get your job done on any day.
Okay, and I think we are already like it's already like 45 minutes. We've crossed 45 minutes, so we'll just take like one more question from that set, which probably would be important enough. So, how to get an entry level big data job without an experience? If someone does not have experience in live projects or any kind of industry experience, so what is the first step, or what is the step ahead for them?
That's a pretty interesting question. Trust me, a lot of freshers, especially, I think, that a person would have been a fresher majorly who wants to get into this, right? So maybe if someone is from an IT background, they might have a certain level of relevant experience, right? So someone, even he's a developer, right? So he has a tendency of working with databases on a day-to-day basis, right? So, but it might not be the same with a fresher. So the first and foremost thing I would advise you guys, if you don't have experience, I would really advise you to get a certification or a course done, right? So without that, it's really hard because this is a very new age industry. Now, if big data is part of your curriculum, what you learn in your engineering, maybe in your third year or final year, I've seen this in Bangalore, right? So a lot of engineering colleges have, sort of included big data as a part of their curriculum, right? So now you have that. I would suggest to pick up your final year project to be on a big data, right? So now you have, like I said, you have a lot of resources available on the internet that you can do it, or maybe do a certification. You would be given access to a live project. That would be one. And also now, you can also start generating your own data points, right? So you have a smartphone, you have your fitness bands, right? So you have your smartphone which can generate your own health data, right? So you can take copies of it and you can start crunching your own data level, right? So you can do that as well. But majorly, without any knowledge, want to kickstart with as a data analyst career in big data, it's impossible, right? So nobody gets born with a talent, with the big data talent, right? So you have to learn it. Only if you learn it, acquire the knowledge and the required skill set, only then you can start a career. If not, I'm sorry, you can't do anything about it. Yeah.
Okay, right. So thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on board and having this webinar, because I think it was quite interactive, and it was very well explained as well, very well put. And for all of those, like to all of those who are who listening, who joined today, we would be having more such learning content. So you can subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date of what is coming on. And before I end, thank you, Stephen, once again
Thank you.
for taking out the time.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.